Hello, everybody. Jan Rutherford here with Self-Reliant Leadership. I am back talking about becoming a self-reliant leader. And let me scoot over, make sure I'm not in the way of the book. And actually, I don't even need to do that this week because I finally got it. The book comes out August 20th. And as we've done for the past 7 weeks, we've had a past Crucible expedition participant on the show to talk about a particular chapter of the book. And this week we're talking about who's who, cultivating the group dynamic. And with us this week is Meg Vanderlaan from Encore Electric. And I'm going to bring her on right now. Meg, the Chief Marketing Officer at Encore. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, Jan. Hello. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
You're welcome. Now, we've done 24 expeditions. We're doing number 25 next week up in near Leadville, Colorado. But you've been on 3. Where were the 3 locations you've been on?
I have been on 3 different crucibles, 1 in Washington State and 2 in Colorado, in Western Colorado.
Yeah. You were in Dominguez Canyon in Colorado, yes. And then you were in
Colorado National Monument.
Yeah, Colorado National Monument, and then the Wallowa Mountains of Oregon. So you've been on 3.
Oregon. Sorry, I said Washington. Yes, Oregon. Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's kind of near Idaho, Washington. It was the Switzerland of Oregon, but you've been on 3. So I'm anxious to hear your perspective. But before we get going, so you've been a chief marketing officer. Marketing has been your profession for a long time. You've been at this great company called Encore Electric. We had Al Paxton on the show recently, who's the chief people officer there. What's not in the public bio? Something we can't find out about you on LinkedIn.
Well, it was funny as I was thinking about having the opportunity to be with you today. I was thinking about how this is coming full circle for me, Jan. I started off way back when I was in college, and I was the co-host of a cable news program. So this is kind of bringing it all back for me.
A cable. Yeah, that's funny. Cable. Like what you make me think of is Wayne's World.
Well, we had a lot of fun. It wasn't quite like Wayne's World, but we sure did have a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm dating myself talking about Wayne's World, I'm sure. So this chapter, what we've done with the book is we outlined what happens on a Crucible expedition, 4 days, 3 nights with a bunch of strangers where no one has anything to prove, protect, or promote. And what we've done is really outline a story that happens on a Crucible, how it applies to the business world, and some takeaways. And the reason that Jackie Jordan and I actually wrote this book was we know the Crucible doesn't scale. We can't take thousands and thousands of people out on expeditions. It's really difficult. It takes a lot of planning and logistics, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to go out in the woods and be dirty for 3 or 4 days at a time and sleep in the dirt. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot over the past 10 years in all these trips. I'm curious, again, this chapter is about who's who, cultivating the group dynamic. You've been on 3 trips. 1 was a group of strangers. 2 were with teams that you knew the people. I'm most interested in the one where you didn't know people ahead of time, when you're in the Wallowa Mountains, sort of that group dynamic. What we tried to do out there was, approach it with some intentionality. And I'm wondering, kind of what your takeaway was as you developed that, the who's who, hey, what's the group dynamic? And you were on a Crucible that actually had 2 teams, 2 sub-teams.
Right. What was interesting with this Crucible, the first one for me, was I was added to the Crucible list very late in the game. The individuals who you had selected or who had selected to join the group had all been together. They had been on some Zoom calls. They had been together. They had worked together. They had already built some kind of relationship. Some of them worked together. So they already had a pre-cultivated relationship. And I came in late in the game. So I was really trying to figure out who was who. And I was paired up with Jackie Jordan, which was fantastic because Jackie is the co-author of your book. And Jackie was about to exit into the civilian world, and she brought so much to the table. It was such a great experience to be paired with her because she was experiencing something brand new. I was experiencing something totally new with this experience on the Crucible. I had been camping all my life, but I had never been backpacking, and that's a totally different experience
Yeah.
altogether. So it was new people trying to figure out, where do I fit in? What do I bring? What do others bring? And how are we going to achieve this ascent? How are we going to achieve this journey together?
Yeah. And it was on your trip, there was a group that where I designated a leader every day. And
Mhm.
so there was a rotating leader. And with the group you were in, I basically didn't designate a leader. I just, gave general direction to the group, and you all deferred. And and I'm curious, again, cultivating the group dynamic, how you went about that, how you deferred leadership, and how that might relate to projects you see in the real world, and different things. Is there any parallels?
Lots of parallels. When you bring a number of people together who are leaders in different settings, different careers, different areas of the world, you bring all of these people together. If there's no one designated leader, one actually comes together. Now, it could be that the leader who is designated is the strongest, the most opinionated, the most experienced. It just depends on where you're at when a leader isn't designated. And I think leadership takes different forms, and individuals have different leadership characteristics. So, on the particular day that you're talking about, in which was, I believe, our second day when we were ascending, is it Aneroid
Yeah,
Mountain? I say,
Mount Aneroid. Yep.
and so living in Colorado, having the opportunity to have climbed a few, not many, 14,000, we call them 14,000 foot peaks, we call them 14ers. I thought, oh, this is like a, almost 11,000 foot peak. I can do this. This is good. But I had no idea the difficulty of the peak. So you have not only human dynamics, but you have the physical challenge of this climb. And I think that's the parallel, going back to your question of how does this journey work together, and how does it parallel the world and your career and your working world? And essentially, you have the people dynamic, and you also have the physical challenge of whatever it is that you're doing, and whether it's physical or mental. And whether you're climbing a mountain with people you don't know, who don't have a designated leader, or whether you're in business, it shows you that in order to be successful in what you're doing, you need to have a plan. You need to know who's the leader, and you need to all be connected to each other in terms of what that plan is. Now, I'll share with you that, and I don't know if you have this piece in the book, but I remember the night before when you designated the teams and we were ready to take this journey together, I pointed out to the team that I have this deathly fear of scree. And I thought that the side of the mountain looked like it had
Loose rocks.
Loose rocks. I have this deathly fear of loose rocks. And I said it the night before. I said, I don't care what way we go, but I just want you all to know that I have this incredible fear of the loose rocks. And I'm ready. I'm physically ready. I'm mentally ready. I'm so excited. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
But let's try and avoid that route. And we went that route, and it was really challenging, physically, mentally. Not just for me, though. There were several others on the team who were also experiencing the same fear. And the fear turned into, I don't really care where we're going. I'm in a self-preservation mode right now. And I need to just make sure I don't slip off and disappear. And I think that's another parallel for business as well. If individuals are maybe not in a place where they should be, or if they are in a place of fear, they get paralyzed, and the journey for everyone is not going to be a successful one until you address those fears, figure it out, help them, and then carry forward.
Yeah, that mountain you're talking about, we have video of it, and I've used it as a case study multiple times. And before we go any further, just real quick to everybody watching, if you're watching live, we'd love to hear where you're calling in from, and we welcome your questions. If you're watching the recording, we're pleased that you're with us as well. So, Meg, on that trip, again, cultivating the group dynamic, there was a group that took it real slow and steady and took no risks. Your group took almost like a knife edge, where the
Mhm.
perceived risk, was significant, and people were a little bit paralyzed. Um, as far as the group dynamic, you know, was the leader, describe how the decision was made to go that route, and what happened when the leader realized nobody was moving because they were scared.
I really think in this particular case, we had a goal. Our team wanted to win. We had a bunch of people on our team. We wanted to get to the top of the mountain
And,
first.
and winning was not a stated objective.
It was not. It was
Yeah.
not, but it was our objective. We
Okay.
wanted to win. So we had a bunch of individuals who wanted to win. And I think in this particular case, we had so much of our sights set on that goal and that peak and getting there first that we forgot where we were. We had
Yeah.
no idea where we were on the mountain. We got lost.
Hmm.
And because we didn't keep coming back to revisit, where do we need to go? What should we be doing? How is everyone feeling? How is everyone doing? Do we need to change? What kind of pivot? What kind of, what do we need to do differently? It was just so laser focused on the end that we forgot to look at where we were going.
And I remember we all got up there at the same time. Both teams got to the top at the same, even though the other team went like it was like the tortoise and the hare.
Right.
Um, let me ask you this. I don't know if I've asked you this. So we're up at top. If that same leader and that same team had said, "Hey, everybody, we're going to do another peak," would the team have been excited and motivated, or would they have said, "Heck no, we're done"? What do you think?
I think we would have gone if we would have had the opportunity to rethink and review what we had just done. And that's another parallel to business. I think when we complete
Mm.
projects or tasks or we reach the goal, we don't take enough time to revisit. Even if we're successful, we were successful. The goal was get your entire team to the top of that mountain. We
Yeah.
achieved the goal. Was it pretty? No. Was it difficult? Yes.
Yeah.
So going back, revisiting, perhaps we would have. And we might have selected a different leader. We might have given someone else an opportunity to help us move forward. And I also remember hearing that the team that took the more calculated route, they were singing. They were having fun.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of fun where we were until we achieved the goal and then we were able to get down. So I think fun along the journey, or at least an opportunity to build a relationship. We built our relationship, but it was based on let's survive this thing.
When I do this case study of your team and the team, and I was with the slow team on that mountain, I always ask, hey, which leader do you think was more effective? And it's usually, hey, the person that went slower was more effective, because the goal was to get to the top and down safely. That was the goal. And, again, we talk about direction, pace, and tone, how people feel along the way. Everybody there would have kept going and going and going. But, when they look at the team you were on, sometimes people will say, well, that leader was better because that leader pushed the team, and now he knows his team, and that team knows their limit. They know what they're capable of. Do you, you were on that team. Do you buy into that, and is there a parallel to the business world?
I think the difference between the two teams was not necessarily the leader. I think, well, it had something to do with the leader, but I think it was the cohesiveness of the team.
Yeah.
The team that was more calculated was a cohesive unit. We were a bunch of individuals plodding along, trying to survive, literally trying to survive. There were several points where I had no ability to use my trekking pole. I couldn't stick it in. It slid out. And I cannot even express the how petrified it was. It was crazy. Yeah. And so it was just an opportunity to try and carry on. And also there was some pride in there too. I didn't want to be the last one. I didn't want to be the one who was afraid. So trying to figure out, okay, how do I carry this forward? And again, another parallel to business. If you've got someone who's struggling, if you've got someone who's not ready for that journey or for that particular route, go back, help figure it out, fix the situation, and then carry forward. So we were not a cohesive unit. And that's really who's who on the team. You have to have a cohesive unit. You have to have people together. You have to have people wanting to be together, wanting to work together, not a bunch of individuals just trying to survive.
Yeah. And I think if he had said, hey, we can take an easy route, we can take a challenging route. Hey, what do you guys think? I think if that had been discussed at the beginning, it might have been a different outcome. But it was, if I remember right, he just went, follow me. Yeah. And, what's interesting out on expeditions is we can turn around and we can see if people are following, we can see if people are struggling. In a hybrid remote world that we live in today, even if in the office, how do you tell if somebody's struggling? They're typing away on their computer. They look like everybody else. So we have to talk and listen a lot more these days to really, get a pulse of the team, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's really difficult to understand when someone is struggling. It takes a while for things to surface because it looks like they're productive. It looks like they're pulling things together. Conversations seem to be going well. It's sometimes challenging to figure out when people are struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to cover just a couple of points that we made in the book, and then I want to go and do a little video. But when we looked at how can we create a collective sense of duty to one another, we came up with 6 points, and I'd love if any of them in particular resonate with you. Was selflessness, team before we before me, predictability, reliability, responsiveness, curiosity, and audacity. And we said, if those could be expectations that people put out to one another and that really get to the self, get to the team, get to the broader organization. Any of those in particular resonate?
I think there's a couple. I think the selflessness piece and also the reliability, as I think about how I was raised, how my siblings and I had an opportunity to be raised. Reliability speaks to work ethic. Yeah. And you have to show up. You have to be there. You have to be as good as your word. If you do it, if you say it, you do it. And if you don't do it right the first time, keep going, figure it out. And the selflessness piece, I think it kind of connects to respect and looking at people as people. Through my career, I've had the opportunity to work in situations where I've been in global environments, international environments where I had the opportunity to travel to be a part of meetings and conversations with individuals who had completely different perspectives based on culture, based on where they were in the world, based on their own personal experiences. And I think if you can take an opportunity to have that selflessness to understand that it doesn't matter where you're from, what your perspectives are, at the very heart of it, you have a heart and you have a desire to succeed and you have a desire to be needed and be a part of a group. And I think if you get to a point where you realize that, you help build a much stronger team.
Yeah, that cohesiveness. Well, and the foundation is always trust. And we talk about trust, but we don't talk often about how that trust is created, cultivated, sustained. And trust is like a perishable commodity, So let's take a look. It's about a 3 or 4 minute video that I filmed out in Dominguez Canyon about a year ago on this particular chapter. So let's take a listen. I'll be interested, Megan, in your takeaways since you weren't on this one.
Sounds great.
Here we go.
Who's who? That's always the question I ask. In fact, on this particular Crucible expedition, at the very beginning, I asked the team, if there wasn't a leader out here amongst the 8 of you, who would be the leader? Don't answer, because I didn't want the group dynamic to change. But it is interesting because as we get out here, with all leaders that are high achieving people, the group dynamic has to settle itself a little bit. Um, who influences based on their expertise of the wilderness? Who influences based on, what they know from the business world? What are the different perspectives based on countries they're from and cultures? And it's always really interesting. And the whole point of this is, whenever you have a new team, and that is one single person enters a team that wasn't on before, or one single person leaves the team, the group dynamic completely changes. Because all of us are who we are, but we're all different people based on the different teams we're on, because there's a group dynamic. And it's really, really important to pay attention to that as a leader, to figure out, who can step in, and who do I rely on? Who do I ask a question that I know is going to influence the group? And that's what's so important, the whole idea of influence. Because our job as leaders is to get people to do things they otherwise wouldn't do willingly, with high commitment and high engagement. And part of that is setting expectations early on. And I like to use the analogy of tree. If you think about this beautiful tree, at the base of it are the roots anchored into that soil. And I like to think of the roots like an organization's values. That foundation is the bedrock. And that trunk that comes out is leadership, and where the strategy emanates. And those branches are other leaders in the organization, and the leaves are individuals. And if you think about it, a tree can withstand weather and wind and rain and the seasons. And a great organization can do the same thing if those values are rock solid. And that's what's so important to express to the team as it comes together, no matter the personalities and the character traits and the influences. And one of the things that I like to say to people at the very beginning is, just like this tree, think of this as expectations for you. T. It's all about the team. It's not about you. It's about the team. R. It's about results. We have to produce. We have to be productive. We have a job to do. People are counting on us. That's really important. E. Empathy. We need to put ourselves in other people's shoes and be empathetic to other people. And the second E is, part of what we need to do is make everybody else's job easier, not harder. So it's TREE. It's all about the team. It's all about results. It's all about being empathetic. And it's all about making other people's job easier, not harder. So when it comes to who's who, of course we're egocentric. We're humans. But what I would urge you to do, just like we do on the Crucible, is pay attention to the group dynamic. Really pay attention to who's contributing. And most importantly, don't just worry about what you're bringing to the table. Find the strengths in others.
There we go.
Great video. Great video. Thank you.
Did it take you back to Dominguez Canyon?
Absolutely.
Was there anything that stood out that you remember from your own Crucible experiences?
Sure. I think the piece of every individual brings something different to the table. And it's easy to look at someone, size them up and say, oh, you're going to be a great climber. You're going to be a great leader. You're going to be difficult. you can size people up, but if you don't look beyond what they are or how they show up, and you don't get to the root of who they are and what are their values, what do they stand for, why are they here, what is their purpose, what do they bring, what are their talents, maybe they're not in this particular analogy of using the climb, maybe they're not the most physically fit, but they know how to read a map. They know how to read, they know how to read the weather. Those are different skills that they bring. And so how do you play to an individual's strengths, but also understand at the base, at the root of the tree, what are the values? What are they rooted in? What keeps them strong, regardless of where they're at in their career and in their journey?
Yeah, it's figuring out the right people in the right positions, or as Tom Rath and Strength Finder said, it's not about you finding your strengths. It's about you finding strengths in other people. Um, your organization, Encore Electric, is, well known throughout Colorado and the region for being an extraordinary place with a great culture. Your chief people officer, and I think more than a few of you have said, hey, we don't need the best people, we need the right people. How
Mhm.
does a leader go about making sure that happens? I mean, I talked to a young leader today, and he said, well, man, we've had a lot of turnover lately. And it wasn't like good turnover. It was like, hey, they're leaving and I'm losing some good people. How does this company go about attracting and retaining really the right people so that you really have this great group dynamic?
I think one of the first times I realized this strengths finder you mentioned, and the whole dynamic of doing what you do best, not doing it to just do it and to do it because it needs to be done.
Yeah.
The first time I realized that in the strengths finder conversation was a very profound moment, and I think Encore does a really good job of that. Is understanding who brings what to the table, where are your passions, where are your skills, and taking that opportunity to put the right people in the right position, because
Yeah.
you can go back to the right seat on the bus. Everybody brings something different, and if you're looking for clones, if you're looking for individuals to just
Mhm.
do the same thing at the same time, then I think you're not going to be successful. And you need to be able to allow individuals to be who they are and to bring their individual strengths, even if it's not yours. What are there, 35 different strengths in that strengths finders book, and you pick your top 5, or you go through the series and you understand what your top 5. And when you realize that when you're building a team, you need to bring people into the team who are not necessarily exactly like you. You need to bring people who have different facets, different personalities, different experiences, to really have a cohesive team and to bring that together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a never ending. And these are the things that fall into super important and never urgent, these kind of conversations. Um, we know, I mean, you're really involved in engagement surveys. A lot of them are based on the Gallup 12. And the Gallup just came out. I'm sure you saw it with the 2024 survey. 33% of employees in Canada and the United States are engaged at work, 23% worldwide. So we've got a problem. We've got challenges. They actually put numbers on it. It was in the trillions of dollars in lost productivity, um, but not just lost productivity. A whole bunch of people aren't fulfilled. How does a leader in this day and age get people to go above and beyond for the customer, for those we serve?
Well, I think it's a number of things. First of all, I think it's important, as we've talked about this entire conversation,
Yeah.
figuring out who brings what
Mm.
to the table, and figuring out how to allow people to do it best. So there's certain skills that I have that I do because they're necessary parts of the job, but there are certain skills that I have that I do because I love to do them. And so figuring out who can take those various skills, do them because they love to do them. So I think finding that piece first. But I also think it's really important as a leader to make sure that everybody on the team knows where you're going. What is our ultimate goal? Why are we doing this? Why are we even here? And I think there's a lot of positivity. I think enthusiasm,
Mm.
just it helps carry things forward. And when people are aligned, when people know the values, are aligned to the values, when people know where you're going, and people have a direction, and they're able to be flexible in that direction to bring what they bring to the party, I think that's how you have engagement. I think that's how you have longevity, and how people succeed together, and how companies succeed with all of their people together.
Yeah, one of the things we wrote about in this chapter was this whole concept of let me carry that, and can you take this?
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to in the military, especially the Army, there's a thing called rucksack marches. It's basically carrying a really heavy pack, going really fast down the road for miles and miles. And you would always have an individual gear that you had on. It might be 35 pounds, it might be 70 pounds. And then you had other things that you would carry that the team would have, an extra radio or a weapon or something. And they were really heavy. And what the team always did is they paid attention and they saw somebody struggle and they'd say, let me carry that. And, there was two, reactions that would happen. Either it'd be like, oh, thank God, take it. Or it'd be like, no, I got it. And then they would wear themselves down and wear themselves down. And then they weren't any good for the team. So there was always this conversation about pride. Like, in order to go, oh, thanks, you're letting someone help you, but you're not letting your pride basically destroy your body and you can't be there for the team. And I don't see that happen very often in the business world because it's not so visible. We can't see people struggling with the work weight of what they're
Right.
doing.
Right.
And again, there's a lot of pride. And, it's like, oh, well, I want to do this. I want to deliver this. I don't want help. And we've even talked about it with your team. There's everybody there is like, hey, you let me know what I can do to help you. But very few of us raise our hand and say, I'm struggling. I can't continue to work, 14 hours a day. I can't do it anymore. What's your counsel, your advice, for this?
One of the most difficult things to do is ask for help. And I am probably number one guilty of this task. I want to do it myself. I don't want to fail. I'm afraid that if I show vulnerability, that people might think less of me, when in actuality, if I would just ask for help, things would be different. And one of the crucibles that I had the opportunity to be on, there was this was a descent. And this was a crucible that I was on with my team members. And we got to this descent and I was the designated leader of the day. So I was the designated leader. We get to this descent. Again, I'm looking at this perilous cliff in front of me.
Yeah.
And I knew I couldn't do it. And I had this pack and I had fear and I didn't want to ask for help because I was the leader. And what if I can't do it? And what is everyone going to think? And I had to give up my pack. And that was a moment of, it was kind of a mixed emotion. It was incredible joy. I don't have to carry my pack down this hill. But it also was a moment of surrender. I just had to say, I know I can't do this myself and I need help. And sometimes when you get to a point like that and you give up that fear of failure, you actually are more successful. And it was really exciting to get to the other side of that and realize that we had made it together as a team. And God bless the person who carried my pack.
Yeah. I don't remember who carried your pack. I remember Stephen, our guide, was the one that was right there. And I remember you commenting that he had extraordinary empathy. And that he didn't say too much. He didn't say too little. He said the right things to you. I mean, was there anything like, does that translate to the business world too?
100%.
Showed up?
Yeah, 100%. I would have been so happy just to sit there and figure out how to get myself out, other than, to carry forward. And he walked with me every step of the journey. Sometimes I leaned on him. Sometimes he let me do my own thing, and we made it. And I've just realized I've made myself sound like a terrible climber. No one's going to invite me on their climbs ever.
Well, the other thing about that, Meg, and this is my hypothesis. I think in order to show vulnerability, to say I need help, you have to have confidence. And I think the more confidence you have, the more it's like, I don't know everything. As a leader, it makes it more comfortable to say, I messed up. I don't understand. I don't know. I need help. And I think if you don't have confidence, if you're insecure, if you're prideful, you won't ask for help and you could get yourself and your team in trouble.
Absolutely. And I know right now there are so many things that I do not know. And members of my team know how to do things and they do them extraordinarily well. They don't want me necessarily doing all of the things that need to get done. And that's what needs to happen on a team. And that's why we take the individuals who are here, they have their skills and they excel at their skills. And a leader doesn't have to know how to do everything, but a leader also knows when to say, I need help.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to cover, and then we'll wrap up here in a little bit. Part of cultivating the group dynamic, I always say to the team when we go out there, a bunch of people that don't know each other, I'd say, and you might remember this, I say, pay attention to, how the level of humor is set. How we don't know we don't know anything. And then all of a sudden, just a couple hours in, there's funny jokes and self-deprecating humor. And there's sort of a level that's set, like, this is acceptable level humor. We're not going to, this is good, this is funny, and we're not going to offend anybody. I mean, and again, in this, really charged environment these days, it's like a minefield as far as humor. What's funny, what's not. Can you just comment on that a little as well?
I think you have to have humor as a basis. And I think that's how trust is actually built. If you have an ability to, some of the self-deprecating humor that you're talking about, if we can laugh at ourselves and we can show that vulnerability, we can build trust with individuals. And it's not always we're not always going to be laughing and joking around, but we have to be able to have fun. And we know that every journey worth taking has some grit in it as well. So if you can mix the right amount of that levity with the right amount of hard work, that's kind of the secret.
I remember in the video of the case study with you in it, there's a point where you ask somebody, well, who got you, down from here? Who talked to you and walked you through all this? And the person goes, the person that got me stuck there. And I remember everybody just started, and your laugh was infectious. And I played that video so many times. I don't know if you remember that or not. But
I do remember that. Remember that. And it's important to laugh. It's important to have that sense of humor, no matter what we're doing. Everything has its serious component, but it's also a way to bring joy and that positivity to the workplace.
Yeah. Hey, I want to read a little section from our chapter, just a few sentences, and we'll wrap up here. I wrote, and Jackie and I wrote, the best teams are driven by the desire to fulfill expectations and obligations with discipline and perseverance. This sense of duty is commonly thought of as taking care of the person to your right and left, having someone's back, not letting the team down. They shun those who criticize, condemn, and complain. They know success comes first from being squared away, so they can focus on the needs of others rather than vice versa. In the end, the most important thing is to uphold the values of the organization. You must create an environment where purpose is clear and shared accountability is seen as a sacred duty. Letting other people down when it comes to commitments, promises, and obligations is simply not an option. And that's kind of how we concluded that. And I know at your organization, we've talked a lot about over the years upholding the values and standards of the organization. And a wonderful guest we had on the podcast recently said succinctly, your culture becomes the worst behavior you tolerate. And, again, cultivating the group dynamic cultivating, the way it's described is it's not one and done. It's all the time.
It's all the time.
Before we go, any last words or thoughts that you've got on this? And before we do, let me just pop this up. And I know I cannot pronounce that name. Ola Jumoke. I don't know if I got it. She says, you're right, Jan. Not many people admitted they were struggling with the workload. That's when the other team members need to show EI. When you notice someone having a hard time, ask for help, step in and say, let me give you a hand with that. Yeah, well said.
Thank you. That's very well said. And I think that goes back to earlier when we were talking about if you're focused so much on that goal and you lose sight of reality and you don't have that emotional intelligence to understand what people are thinking and feeling and what's motivating them, then you're not going to get to that goal as easily as you could have if you were to take the time and pause and take a look at that.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, anything else you'd want to throw in and add?
Well, really excited to read the book. I know that you and Jackie have worked very hard on this book, and I know this was not a plug for the book, but having Jackie as my accountability partner on the first Crucible that I went on already 6 years ago, hard to believe it was that long ago, and having the ability to continue to maintain a relationship with Jackie and understand what drives her, and working together with you, I'm really excited to see what you have to say and how you've pulled together all of the findings. The journey on the Crucible was very profound for me, even 3 times.
Yeah.
I discovered something a little bit different about myself, my team, and have taken those learnings with me. So
Yeah.
appreciate that and look forward to August.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Meg. And it is a subtle plug for the book that comes out August 20th. We hope in the meantime you'll pre-order wherever you get your books. And for everybody that's watched, we really appreciate it. Meg, I've enjoyed our collaborative efforts over the years, and we got to give a shout out to your sister, Monica, who was just on the Leadership Podcast. That episode hasn't aired yet, but it's a good one. And
Great.
yeah. And, and it is funny. I mean, we were talking yesterday about, our values as kids and families and different things, and how important it is to make sure the organization you're aligned with really, their values really match up to yours. I think that's a big secret of cultivating that group dynamic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jan. Really
All
appreciate
right.
the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, thanks, Meg. All right, everybody, that'll do it for us. We will have this was chapter 7. We've got 12 chapters and a conclusion. So we've got 6 more to go each and every week. So we hope you'll tune in. And all these are stored on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube if you want to go back and revisit a chapter that we talked about. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Happy 4th of July.